Hey guys, so yeah, one more episode, then we get to episode 1000, and honestly, like just based off the preview, I know it's not the entire episode, but based off that preview, I think episode 1000 is going to be a little bit better than we think, honestly. But that's just my prediction, my hope for it. But so talking about episode 999 though, right out of the gate, let's talk about Yamato. Cause I'll be honest, when I saw a lot of these scenes with her in the manga that we see in this episode of her just kind of like saying I'm of her like grandstanding of her saying I'm Odin, all that stuff. They felt awkward and annoying a lot of time. On top of feeling like they were kind of dragging the pacing down. We get it. You admire Odin. Can we move along, please? But that's the funny thing about context. Once you obtain more information about a character, even coming down to emotional quirks, even emotional quirks take on a whole new like meaning. And looking at Yamato's interactions with Momonosuke in this episode, well, still kind of awkward and funny, I guess, in some respects, definitely carry much more of a tragic undertone now, and make you realize when you realize what as to why it is that the Yamato idolized Ohm so much and wants to be him in a sense. But even more than that, seems like what we get in this episode with Yamato having like even simple scenes like having that spat with Ulti or just and even declaring herself as Odin, and not wanting to go back to Kaido, that also give us a glimpse into Yamato's life growing up. Because if you like, I think the one thing that stands out above all about Yamato after this episode is pretty much her maturity level is in certain respects kind of stunted, in the sense where she latches onto certain people of who she wants to model herself as or look up to, because it almost because you can tell she pretty much never she almost never had that person she could admire or who to model herself after, which like it's just the fact that she says I'm Odin because she looks up to him or something. It says a lot towards the relationship with her father, with Kaido. Like that relationship, yeah, like again, just from what we get of Yamato's like emotional state, I guess you could say, in this episode, it does give off the sense that her relationship with her father, yeah, it isn't great, and we kind of already knew that. But this, just her whole, just getting this glimpse of just how much her maturity might be stunted, gives a whole new context as to just how like bad that relationship is. Um, Now, with that said, I should take mention of the obvious, which is that the pacing not only felt slow, but weirdly all over the place this episode. And the only other way I can describe it is that watching this episode, you can tell the decisions made in this episode's production were for the sole purpose of trying to reach the intended story mark Toei has in mind for next week's episode, which again, with it being the episode 1000, I definitely get the idea, and again, based on the preview, episode 1000 is going to be I think a lot better than what we think it is. But I think because of this, it will just overall be a more different experience. I think the one thing people have to keep in mind going into episode 1000 is that it's probably going to be a much different experience, like compared to chapter 1000, for better or worse. With that said, though, we get a full-on introduction to the numbers in this episode, and honestly, I was not expecting those color schemes at all for the numbers. Like, it's one thing, it's one of those things where I didn't know what I was expecting for as to how as to what the numbers would look like in color or something like that, but seeing the numbers, like seeing the numbers with purple, green, and pink skin, like individually having those three colors as their skin color, is kind of the farthest from what I expected them to have. And honestly, I can't even, like, it's one of those things where looking at them, I'm like, that's their color scheme, huh? Like it feels like I don't know how to describe it, but it just it kind of threw me off a lot more than I expected it would. Like I was not expecting them to have in order to have I think it's the vibrancy of the colors, not necessarily the colors themselves, because I wasn't expecting the vibrancy of that of their colors, of the color scheme of their skin to be that bright. I think is what it was. Um, and honestly, but aside from that, I can't even remember if this was actually in the manga or not. But until this episode and last week's episode, I was more excited to see. I, I was definitely more excited to see Jinbei and Robin face off against Big Mom. I mean, obviously, given her track record in this arc, we know how that was going to end, which is still disappointing. Which is still a disappointing part. And part of me would have preferred seeing a little bit more Frankie versus Big Mom before that, but just seeing Jinbei like flip Big Mom over, and Robin basically just using her delphinium to kind of like roll Big Mom away, that that just felt like beautiful vengeance. Like with like it's one of those moments where you can tell. You can pretty much tell that Prince Jinbei has been waiting to do something like that to Big Mom for a long while, and it doesn't make Big Mom look good, but it is still just beautiful vengeance to witness on his part. And at least we got, and again, even though I would have liked to see Frankie versus Big Mom, at least we got to see the next best thing, which is Frankie going ham on the numbers after realizing one of them had brachiotank in its graph. So I guess you could say it all evens itself out there. With that said, this is one of the more odd cases of art and animation for me to talk about, because just like with the pacing, it wasn't necessarily bad, but you can clearly tell where the focus was, and because of that, it did make certain moments stand out a lot more, and not always for the better. For example, one thing I definitely noticed about this episode is how many times it looked like they recycled the shot of Usopp and Chopper like fumbling around in the brachio tank. Like to me that was the most distracting part of the episode, honestly. And instances like that didn't make the much better. Like it's one of those things where scenes like that did make the much better animated scenes stand out more, but it makes it more obvious that okay, Toei is saving the bulk of their talent and their budget for next week, so they definitely had to cut a lot of corners in this episode. And I think that's the main thing that bugged me about this episode most of all, is that there's less of an attempt. Like in most episodes, at least in most episodes, Toei at least tries to hide the fact that they kind of have a that at least tries to hide their errors. But here, I think there was less of an attempt to do that, and obviously to hide. And in this case, it's to hide. They're not even hiding the fact that episode 1000 is going to be much better, I think. Which I guess if I did have to say something positive, is that for as mixed a bag as the animation was this episode, I feel it did kind of reinforce that they're focusing all their attention on episode 1000, which I think will make next week's experience all the better. But I don't know. I just think previous episodes have done better with hiding their flaws, I think. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Twitter, Analyst Control. Be sure to hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, everyone.